Good day, teacher. My name is Ana Navarrete, and my research project protocol is Oral Corrective Feedback Influence on EFL Students' Perceptions and Motivation. To start with, I want to mention that providing feedback is a highly controversial issue with arguments both for and against it. Scholars who are for providing feedback think that it's a useful process for learners in their language development. In contrast, scholars who are against it think that corrective feedback may have potential negative effects on learners' emotions and, in consequence, affect the L2 learning process. Throughout the years, there have been several studies regarding corrective feedback, but they don't focus on the emotional aspect of students. In this case, motivation is part of that. In my experience as a teacher, I have noticed that in basic levels, corrective feedback is not usually given. So this brings consequences to students when they are in higher levels because they don't develop their monitor as they should. Another experience that I've had is that I was observing some classes and I noticed an overcorrection um, to students. So I was amazed to this experience because it was like two opposite sides. Like I have seen the part that no feedback is given, and the other part that is that an overcorrection and oh towards the students is given. So I was wondering how these students might feel when they are overcorrected. So that's why I decided um, to carry out this research. So well, um, starting with the theoretical framework, let's talk about psycholinguistics. So this is a branch of linguistics that is mainly concerned with language understanding, production, and acquisition. It has two major subfields, which is first language acquisition and second language acquisition. In this case, we're going to focus on second language acquisition, also known as SLA. So this area focuses in the way in which people learn a language different from their mother tongue, and it could be inside or outside of a classroom. So, um, second language acquisition notices that there are individual differences in the L2 acquisition process. This could be personality, um, motivation, cognitive aspects, um, etc. So, I am going to focus on motivation. So, motivation involves attitudes and affective states that influence the effort that students make to learn the second language. There are different types of motivation, such as instrumental, integrative, resolutive, intrinsic and extrinsic. In this case, we're only going to focus on extrinsic motivation because this type of motivation appears due to the existence of external factors such as rewards or punishments. In this case, the external factor is feedback provided by the teacher, which it could be positive or negative. Um, So, as a teacher, it's important to be careful with the way in which we motivate students. This would be providing appropriate rewards about their behaviors, as well as strengthen their activities that they perform. This in order to arise all the types of motivation: intrinsic, extrinsic, integrated, and instrumental motivations. So now, moving on to corrective feedback. This term refers to the responses to learner utterances containing an error. Corrective feedback could be implicit or explicit. And as I already mentioned, we have two different types of corrective feedback: positive and negative. So positive feedback provides effective support to the student by stimulating motivation to keep on learning. In contrast, negative feedback provides negative evidence, and this might damage students' feelings and attitudes. So Martinez, which is an Spanish researcher, advises teachers to preferably individualize the correction and use variety of corrective feedback techniques. Um, Actually, if they use implicit, it's better. But this taking into consideration the particular learner's cognitive and affective needs. This in order not to affect in a negative way their L2 development. So why is this relevant for the field? Well, according to research that I carried out, well, yeah, that I made, um, doing this research would fill the little explored gap in research literature related to the relationship between motivation and corrective feedback. As I already said, there is a lot of research on corrective feedback, but not related to motivation. Moreover, this research has been studied from the quantitative perspective, and actually, Martinez um, recommends to use qualitative research methods um, in order to have more information about students. Additionally, um, research is not very common in Mexico due to different factors, but carrying out this research would be um, beneficial for the Mexican field. Now I'm going to talk about the methodological framework. So the research paradigm is interpretivism. which is used to describe a research view of the world, the perspective, thinking, principles, and abstract beliefs that shape how a researcher interprets and acts within a world. So part of this paradigm comes the method, and the method that I am choosing, as I already mentioned, is qualitative. Because of Martinez's suggestion, and also because what I want to know is the student's perception. So, from this, the approach that I am having is a case study. So, a qualitative case study will let me know the perception of students' experiences, opinions, motivations, or even fears. So, I am going to carry out an exploratory case study, which is recommended when a researcher aims to gain extensive and in-depth description of a phenomenon. So, so my objective is to find out what the students' perceptions towards oral corrective feedback are, as well as to what extent teachers' oral corrective feedback influence EFL learners' motivation in the LT classroom. So for this, I have three research questions, which are: what are students' perceptions on receiving oral corrective feedback? To what extent does teachers' oral corrective feedback influence EFL learners' motivations in the LT classroom? And finally, how do EFL learners react to the oral corrective feedback process from their teacher? So, well, the educational context that we are having is the UNAM, Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, more specific in one of its schools, which is Zacatlán, Facultad de Estudios Superiores Zacatlán, and more specifically at the CEI, which is Centro de Enseñanza de Idiomas. So, this language center not only focuses on English, but also in different languages such as German, Arabic, Chinese, Korean, Finnish, French, Greek, English, Italian, Japanese, Latin, Portuguese, Russian, Swedish, Polish, Turkish, and Nahuatl and Ottoman. So it has two types of courses. The PG course, which is the 4 skills course, and the CL course, which is reading comprehension. Obviously, I am going to focus on PG courses because what I want to know is the influence of oral corrective feedback on motivation. So I need students to speak in the second language, not only read, but speak and participate and commit mistakes. So this PG course has 9 different levels. Um, these levels cover approximately a B1 level according to the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, between a B1 and B2. So, um, from these levels that I already mentioned, I will only focus on the basic ones, which for me would be PG1 and PG2. These two levels, there are a lot of different classes or groups. So, um, how am I going to do sampling? For case studies, it is recommended to have a sample size of around 10 people. But it could even grow up to 30 people, but this with computer assistance. Um, so I'm going to use criterion sampling strategy, which is to select participants who meet a predetermined criterion. So the two criteria that I am going to use to sample my population and to have my universe is students who react positively to corrective feedback and students who react negatively to corrective feedback. Um, for this, I'm going to have a observation class in order to select my universe. Obviously, the selected students will be asked if they would like to participate in the research, and once having accepted, it is expected to have between 4 and 6 participants per group. So in this case, we expect between 8 and 12 participants in total. Now, regarding data collection, um, for qualitative research, there is not like a comprehensive catalog of techniques. Um, it could be They could be ethnography, interviews, focus groups, introspection, case studies, diary studies, research journal, and even grounded theory. So my three data collection methods that I chose is classroom observation, open response questionnaires, and semi-structured interviews. So I, the researcher, I'm going to be a non-participant because I don't want to interfere in the classroom. I just want to observe, obviously as objectively as possible. So um, I'm going to use classroom observation in order to answer one of my research questions, which is how do EFL learners react to the oral corrective feedback process from their teacher? For this, I would need at least 5 observation classes per group with an approximately duration of 2 hours. Obviously, these observations will be video recorded. There is a problem in here, which I would like to mention, that is called reactivity. That is, that the students react differently because of the researcher's presence in the classroom. So, scholars suggest that to overcome this problem, we need to let the students become accustomed to the observer's presence. So they go about their usual activities and behavior, because the more time spent observing, the better and reliable information um, would be obtained. That's why I am planning to have 5 observation classes. But as I already mentioned before, I'm going to have an extra observation class in order to select my universe. So in total are going to be 6 observation classes, but with different purposes. I would like to mention that case studies are likely to evolve over the course of the study. Thus, the questions and the information that we have needs to be examined and adapted or modified according to the findings that we have. So in this case, if at some point I consider that 5 sessions, well, 5 observation sessions are not enough, I would need to have more. But this will depend over the course of the research. Additionally, during these classroom observation sessions, uh, me as the researcher, I'm also going to take field notes regarding the teacher and student interaction when they are having corrective feedback. And this in order to write my thoughts about the student's reaction, as well as to write down useful information for further interviews with participants. My second data collection method is an open response questionnaire. So these type of questionnaires provide a way to find out what people are thinking about a particular topic. In this case, the questionnaires that I am going to provide to the participants would be in paper. It's going to be short and it will contain broad questions such as they will be written in first person, like how did I feel after the teacher corrected me? What thoughts crossed my mind after the teacher corrected me? How do I feel about my future participations in class? Was my motivation towards learning affected by the correction from the teacher? Why? Is there anything else I would like to say about today's corrections? So, as you may have noticed, uh, this questionnaire is going to be answered after the class. So, students can write down their feelings and thoughts regarding that corrective feedback. So, our knowledge about how corrective feedback affects their motivation will be broadened. The purpose of this data collection method is to answer another research question, which is what are students' perceptions on receiving oral corrective feedback? It is important to mention that as these are basic um, students, they have little command of the L2. Thus, the questionnaire will be provided in Spanish, so it would be easier for them to express their emotions and thoughts. Finally, we have semi-structured interviews, which let the researcher explore people's experiences and views. Semi-structured interviews is a set of prepared guiding questions and prompts. The format is usually open-ended, and the interviewee is encouraged to elaborate on the issues raised in an exploratory manner. So this data collection method is going to be the complement of the two latter. In case that there are some questions that we would like to ask the students, this would be the opportunity to know more about the things that they haven't mentioned. So there will be at least 5 interviews with the participants, approximately 30 minutes, and they will also be recorded. So with this information, we are going to be able to answer the question: to what extent does teachers' oral corrective feedback influence EFL learners' motivation in the L2 classroom? So now I'm going to show you the calendar for this research. First, the design of the research protocol, which is taking place from February to June 2020. Then the data collection and analysis is planned to um, to occur between September 2020 and February 2021. And finally, the conclusions and report on findings will take place between March and July 2021. So now, how does this analysis will be carried out? So first, we have to transcribe the data from the interviews and the classroom observations. This will be um, using a web page, and after that there is going to be like a manual revisor to ensure that the text follows what the speakers actually said. Once we have all this data, which is going to be storage in the cloud and also have a copy on a pen drive, uh, will need to be pre-coded and coded. So these stages means that the researchers have to read and read again the transcripts, reflect on them, and write some thoughts in memos or notes. So this coding technique requires the researcher to highlight extracts of the transcribed data and labeling so they can be easily identified, retrieved, and grouped. This is going to be easy because it's going to be using a computer, so we can use different colors, tags, comments on the documents, being eco-friendly. So for the growing ideas stage, the researcher is going to use memos or notes and profiles. So these notes will have thoughts about the documents that we already read, because they will facilitate the second level coding. Additionally, interview profiles for each participant will be created out of information from the three data collection methods that we gather. So the interpretation of the data actually take place since the pre-coding stage. That's why it is advised to write notes. And well, drawing conclusions, um, it's like a summary of all the interpretations that we have, all the notes that we created, that we labeled, that we highlighted. All of those are the drawing of conclusions. Now, the reporting of the data uh, will be summarizing the information as visually as possible using graphic organizer, images, infographics to present the information collected throughout the research and, of course, the final conclusions. So now let's talk about the contributions, assumptions, limitations, and my final thoughts regarding this research. The main contributions, as I already mentioned, is that the influence of corrective feedback on motivation is something that is little studied, so it will contribute to the field of second language acquisition. And at the same time, um, there is field research on Mexico. So this is a great opportunity to start doing research in applied linguistics. Also, the findings that the findings will help teachers to know how their corrective feedback affects or will influence us students' motivation. So for further groups, they will have this into consideration, and obviously this will improve the quality of the classes at the say at the language center of Acatlan. Now regarding my assumptions, I hope that teachers and students would be cooperative with this project and not to be not to lie and to be open to their feelings and thoughts and whatever they want to share with the researcher. Now, limitations, I think that with the situation that we currently have, there are a lot of limitations. First of all, because we are in the middle of a pandemic, and this research involves being in a classroom with several people talking to each other, and in my calendar, the data collection is expected to take place on September, which, well, because uh, in that date, uh, the next semester begins. But I didn't think that we are coming back on September. Even if we do it, um, it will be complicated, and I don't know how the situation in classrooms will be. Also, as this semester was online, there there are gaps in the knowledge of students. So maybe teachers need to do some review of the topics in order to continue with new learning. So maybe teachers wouldn't have enough time, and maybe they will reject me because, well, they have priorities, and obviously I'm not gonna be that priority. So yes, I think that those are the main limitations, the situation that we're facing nowadays. So, well, my final thoughts. I think that doing research is interesting, and not a lot of people do it because it's complicated. Um, it takes a lot of time, sometimes years, and it's a complicated process since the beginning. I mean, this is only the protocol, and I encountered a lot of problems. Um, because I think that one of the problems, the problematics that people have is that it's difficult for them to express what they want to do. So in this case, it was hard for me to find a way of how to do this research in a qualitative way, because as I already mentioned, the majority of the students are quantitative, and I didn't want to take that approach because of reasons that Martinez gave, that we need to have more insight into students' perceptions. So um, I also have problems with the research questions because it was hard for me, like how I'm going to get to that objective. I don't know what to answer. I don't know if I am doing the right questions. But it was a relief for me to read that case studies are like this, and with the when you're collecting the data and interpreting and analyzing it, you realize and you change your questions. Maybe you change a little bit your objective. So um, it was comforting to read that, because now I know that I am not the only one that is facing these issues. But I think that it was a good experience that I would really like to have again and do research for Mexico, for the university, and for knowledge. Because nowadays, in this century, and with the pandemic again that we are facing, one of our most useful assets that a person can have is knowledge. and wanting to, to change things and discover new things. So, well, thank you for listening to me, and I'm sorry because I took a lot of your time. I wasn't expecting that. I actually planned this presentation to be as quickly as possible. I hope that you're okay, teacher. Take care, and hopefully, I'll see you in September. Thank you.